you today at ICTforAg 2024. My name is Simone Sala. I am a director of Global Soil and Ecosystem Solutions at Varda, which is a startup I'll be telling you about in a minute. And I'm here with friends and colleagues from across the world. Benjamin Addom from the Commonwealth, Zinnya Villar from Data Pop Alliance, and then Simone from Dalbert Data Insights. So what we're going to do today is presentation about SoilHive, which is a tool that we built to facilitate access to soil data and to facilitate the exchange of soil data. And then I'll take advantage of the brains of Zinnya, Ben, and Dennis here to ask them what do they think is and are actually the main challenges associated with sharing data in developing regions and for development goals, and which are good practices to accelerate how we can safely share data at scale for the greater good. So let me just start telling you more about Varda and what that is. It's a small startup that was founded by Yara International a couple of years ago with the mandate of finding ways to promote access to field data to power and empower a transition towards a nature positive food system. The idea being that access to data is limited and hampered for a different reasons, some totally legitimate, just privacy and privacy concerns, agency, and some others which are due to technical and financial reasons that can be relatively easily solved. So we were created and we tested dozen pilots across different settings, ranging from coffee farmers in Colombia to grasslands farmers in Finland and so forth, to understand which were the main drivers. We built a trust model for our data platform, and we finally funnel into two main products, which are Global Field ID and SoilHive, which we think are foundational pieces for, again, foundational infrastructure that public and private sector alike could use to promote farm and field open data exchange. And we've been on a journey. Again, we were founded as a startup, but we realized that these products, to really scale up and get everyone across the ecosystem to use them and improve them, they have to be open and they have to be a digital public good. So after some time, we realized with the founder that the best way forward for us is to transition towards becoming a social enterprise or nonprofit. That's yet to be agreed, but the point being that we need a specific governance to become really to be perceived not only as a separate company from our founder, but as a neutral company with a dedicated governance to bring everyone on board to, again, tackle the issues that prevent data sharing and promote data exchange. Field ID is basically, to use a simple analogy, a global land parcel information system where each plot is associated with a polygon and an ID. As you know, in some areas of the world, you do have conflicting land parcel information systems when you have them, or in some cases, again, you do not have any way to access boundaries. And typically what's happening is that you do have different ways to refer to the same field boundary and different representations and configuration of that boundary. So we said, how about we try to solve that piece of the puzzle, as there are so many other added value initiatives and activities that organization could focus on. We make it easier for anyone to find a polygon associated to a field. We have an ID associated to that. So even if you are a farmer, potentially you could just get your ID on a piece of paper and tell everyone you're working with upstream and downstream, this is my field and this is my ID. And then you facilitate and enable data exchange on top of a shared understanding of a field, and what a field is and what the field is and how it is represented. And then SoilHive. SoilHive, again, is a data platform that we built because soil is a particularly critical asset to for agriculture and beyond. You've been clearly hearing about soil being strategic for a number of ecosystem services, ranging from filtering water to carbon storage to clearly support nutrients that pass from our soil into those who fit with crops, being animals or ourselves. So soil is strategic for a number of reasons, and soil are degraded. So we need to accelerate our understanding of soil and how it interacts with cropping systems to make the best out of them, to preserve them. But one of the challenges associated with that is that data is limited. So there is not that much data available. There is data, but it's fragmented. It's not shared typically. And this particularly affects developing and emerging regions, so data scarce regions. One additional thing is that we don't really have a platform that can allow the sharing and the exchange of data across different geographies. So you do have examples of data hubs at the national level or at the regional level, but these cross-country aspects and functions typically are not easily accessible. Although there are players in the sector, such as ISRIC, such as FIO, that have been doing a great job in harmonizing soil data sets. So we decided to focus on this problem and coming with the assumption that, well, once we can agree on which field we're talking about, what do we say? What do we talk about? And the first thing typically is soil. So we said, oh, let's build something whereby a user that nowadays has to go through a different number of portals and websites to find the soil data they're looking for, and actually they have to know about those portals. We try to make it easier for them to just define a region of interest and find the soil data that's available there, compare what's the value of properties they're interested to in those points, and surface which are the gaps related to data density. So being able to see where we do have regions that are and areas that are more served than others, to do something about that. So to collect more data, to nudge organizations, particularly private organizations, to share data and or develop policies and investments that tackle those gaps. So we wanted to build the platform in a way not to capture one single use case. We do know that there are a number of use cases that would require soil data, and we wanted to try to build something focusing on the data infrastructure and infrastructural data piece, so that other third parties could have built on top to cater for those different use cases. So being quite agnostic at being aware about the use cases, being aware of the different uses of soil data, but trying to be agnostic in a way to build a multi-dimensional platform that could, go beyond a single use case. And we started by doing something which is quite trivial, honestly, which is getting the soil data that were publicly available, although scattered and fragmented across different websites, in a single place. So we took data from regional and global organizations, both raster, so maps, soil property maps, and data points, so data sets with experimental data, and ingested into our platform to allow a user that typically would have gone through these different platforms to find the data they were looking for, into just finding them over a single gateway. Now, let me show you what that is, because I think it will speak more easily to you. So if you bear with me 1 second, I'll just share what the platform looks like. So here is SoilHive, and as you can see, it's you basically have a map with this color coding, which we chose because it can be it's the color coding that allows to be seen by as many color blinded people as possible. And the lighter the color, clearly the less data you have, the stronger the intensity of the color, the more data you have. Clearly, we used the H3 library, which is an open source library, to represent data availability. So you can drill down to a resolution whereby one hexagon of those is around 1 hectare. And what you can do very easily is to select a country of interest for you. And the system will clearly single out the country for you, will tell you which are the existing data sources. You can also filter that by looking at a specific agroecological zone, depending what you're interested to, and then the system will tell you which are the areas, which are the areas that match with your criteria. Clearly, you can upload a polygon yourself, or you can just simply say that you're interested in a specific area of the country, and then just see what's available in that specific area of interest. Of course, you can also filter that, so you can select soil groups, a soil group that is interesting for you. In this case, agri soils. You can select other criteria and cover, like your patches wetland, for example. So you'll be able to actually see which are the areas that match your criteria, how many data points, so experimental data is available there, which are the data sources that are available over there, and when you get to that point, you also be able to select a property you're interested to, which may be soil organic carbon stock, and then you see which are the data sources with that information, or whatever else, organic carbon content, for example. And for each one of those, you could just check out what the data source is, which are the soil properties that are mapped inside the data source, how, and so forth. And clearly go to the website to know more about the work of the organization that shared those data. Once you're done with that, and once you select the data you're interested to, you can select to download them. You have a recap. You set your email, and in a matter of minutes, you'll receive a link with the data that, again, is clipped based on your special selection, and with the property you are interested specifically. So basically, this saves lots of time for R&Ds, researchers, etc., to find what they're looking for and run, quicker, larger experiments. Clearly, one I told you about Field ID, which is this PIS. Let's say we'll be building. This is Brazil. One thing you can easily do is to basically get a plot, get an ID, copy a field ID, go back to the platform, and then say, well, actually, I'm interested to this specific plot in Italy or Brazil or the US or whatever it is, and the system basically clips your selection based on that specific data point. And even in this case, you'll be able to see what's available, they'll download it, and so forth. The second piece of the puzzle here is the comparison. So one thing is to find the data, and the other thing is, if you are an agronomist, if you are an advisory service provider, I want to know what's the difference between these two different fields. Here we are in Tanzania, for example, and say, okay, I want to see what's the difference between two different fields. So having been able to compare spatially a property of interest. If you're interested in soil acidity, you get into pH, for example, and then you see which are the data sources that are available over there, and you'll be able clearly to see for those different data sources and for those different two different points, based on the depth, which are the values, if there is any conversion applied, the sampling date, if there is a sampling date, or a publication, if there is one, if it's a raster or a point. And even in this case, download everything as CSV or PDF and use it for your own research. At each point, you have the chance to donate data, because clearly that's our North Star. We've been building this to tap into data sources that are not shared for the moment, to make it easier for everyone to get access to the soil data they need. We've been building a bunch of things on top of this. We're giving the possibility, we're getting a private data hub. So if you are interested to share data in one area, but you want to embargo your data for some point because you are doing research, or you are you just want to wait for some time before sharing the data, or you just want to give it access to the data to those who are your partners, you may very well share it with us. We will put a lock like this, and you'll be able to just share it with only the organizations that are legitimate users of this data. We encourage anyone to do it clearly for everyone. So, so again, that's our North Star, but we are conscious that sometimes people is not prepared to share right away. And we offer also that option. We are building and documenting third-party APIs so that local startups and organizations can fetch data from SoilHive to serve their users and customers and partners. And I guess I just stop here, because what I'd like to do now is to pick the brains of, again, the people who are here with us, Ben, Zinnya, and Dennis, to know more about how, you know, we did our own piece of work to facilitate access to a portion, a very small portion, though important, data, which is soil data. But there is so much that's needed, and I'd really like to ask all of them, as they have a tremendous experience in this field and in general in the development field. Why is it so difficult? Which are the challenges associated to data sharing in this field? I'll just go in the order I see over screen. So I'll start with Ben, then over to Zinnya, and then Dennis. So Ben, over to you in a couple of minutes. Can you tell us, which are the challenges?
No, thanks, Simone. I was just talking to a partner at the beginning of this week from, it's called True Footprint. I'm not sure if and they told me that they use your data.
Know them.
Yeah, so they told me that I said, yeah, I know you. So they didn't know that I know you. So, no, I mean, this is huge. This is huge. And I know we've talked about it before. It's a kind of things that we are also working on. And you can, I mean, those who are listening can imagine how complex this is and what it takes to do something like this. And you can imagine, you know, the value when you open it up, and it's already open up, right? So yeah, the challenge within the agricultural sector, the reason why we need this kind of public, you know, infrastructure is that everybody is investing in this kind of data, you know, and people are trying to say, no, we don't have access to the data, or we don't know how to share. So if there can be this kind of infrastructure that will allow, whether you're a researcher, development organization, farmer cooperatives, government, to easily go in and see what is in your country, and the guides are there how to combine things and filter and know. That is huge. So for me, the big question as to why are we not doing it is something that all of us need to think about and see, why can't we build upon it? So this is soil, and for agriculture, it's not only soil, you know, there's weather, there's market, there's agronomy for each commodity, you know, there's a need for standardization. All kinds of things need to come together to add value to what you guys are doing. So yeah, for me, that's my initial comment, that, you know, this is huge. This is something that we need to build upon and expand.
Thanks, Ben. I'll refrain to comment, and I'll just hand it over to Zinnya. In the meantime, I'm taking notes. So Zinnya, even for you, the question is,
yes, thank
challenges.
you, Simone. Congratulations. This is really, really great, and congratulations for all the work that you have done to create this platform. So in terms of challenge, according to the work that we have done at the Data Pop Alliance, I think that I can list some of the big challenge that we find in this part of data sharing. So first of all, of course, and you know, this project a lot, is the data privacy and security concerns. then this lack of standardizations that Ben mentioned, then this part of technical infrastructure too, that you need to have a kind of high levels of architects inside your organization and inside all the persons that you are working on to find a solution for this data sharing. Of course, this is directly linked with capacity skills of all the people that is in this sense. Then, because of data privacy, you have a lot of political and institutional barriers that are very, very heavy to understand, very difficult to clarify sometimes. And behind all this, the financial constraints, right? Because all of this, you need to find a sustainable way to try to do this data sharing for all the time. And sometimes you have funding only for a period of time, and in this period of time, of course, you don't have all the data that you want to have. So I think that yes, I think that these are the most important. Then of course less important, but well, it is not that they are less important, but I think that if you have your goal to this data sharing, then you have the problem of ethical and cultural issues. In some terms, for example, maybe in terms of geolocated data about conflict areas, for example, that are very sensitive, and that you need to be very careful about the data that you are sharing, that you are sharing. And then, of course, and this is of all the type of problems that we work with data, is the data quality. So I think that yes, this is, for me, these are the challenge that we have in general for all these problems of data sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Zinnya. Lots of interesting inputs on top of what Ben shared. Dennis, I'm sorry because we are the last one, so maybe some of the stuff you wanted to say has been said already, but feel free to repeat and expand or take it forward.
Sure.
Please.
Sure, of course. And yeah, I will be a bit of a broken record here, but congratulations on this one. Honestly, having the scale of data that you're operating with and still retaining this snappiness of the application that we've seen on the demo is very impressive. My nature of my work is very technical, so I understand the challenge very well, and achieving what you achieved is no small feat. So congrats on that one. When we are talking about building a data product and sharing data and getting people to share data, we would like to, at DDI, we'd like to talk about building data ecosystems rather than building data systems or building applications. And we usually divide it into three major pillars. Those are communities that you are operating with, the technologies that you are operating with, and the governance that unites all of them. And I think that I'm gonna just maybe structurize and give structure and maybe add to the points of previous speakers. The community part and the main challenge for the usage and sharing the data is, of course, the adoption. So having capacity to build something like this and then capacity to use something like this is something that people are not always possessed. So you would need specialists to make sense of the data, but you also need specialists to upload the data in the correct formats or the correct harmonization levels. In terms of technology, and seems like, again, you're solving majority of it, scalability is a very big issue. If we are standardizing and centralizing the information, having something that is scalable and contains a lot of data for everyone to use is a very big challenge. We see a lot of very good systems that are developed in health or agriculture, like distributed health information systems from folks in Oslo that allows you to scale to a lot of data. But we also see that those become progressively slow, and then people drop adoption because waiting for your insights is a big problem. And then of course there is a matter of ownership of the data and trust, right? Especially with this wave of generative AI that we have right now, where people are even more suspicious about their own personal data and the data that they own. Like, will this data be used somewhere that I don't know where? How and where does data gonna go? Are we giving the data away to for training a new model or something like this? And I think that all those can be solved given a correct approach or practice, right? I think that building trust is one of the first things, both with your partners that share data, but also with people that use data. Showing how to use this data and make it as accessible as possible, both in terms of giving a fair access, but also simple access through, let's say, APIs, right, or web interfaces that you provide. Maybe there is also a place where, say, generative AI is a big bump in can be a big bump in adoptions for people who lack the technical capacity to go and fetch this data on their own or make sense of the data, so they can actually ask the chatbot to analyze the data from the application that you have that is connected with the API or assistant tools that we've seen and we've been developing a lot. And then and lastly, of course, but not of course least important, is communities and making sure that people share the data and use the data and share and use the data in the correct format. And I think that there is for example, the area we operate in mostly is Africa, and there we see a lot of new initiatives, not new initiatives, but a lot of initiatives that try to harmonize and standardize the data, like a Kenyan Open Data Initiative or East African Community Standards and things like that. And riding with those waves rather than going against, I think, is one of the like standing on the shoulders giants, basically, right? Is one of the main drivers and leverages for adoption of the big data ecosystem or big data portal, like this one. Sorry, it took a bit of time, but it's a very close topic to me.
No, actually, it's great stuff. And if you don't mind, I'll just try to single out a couple of points from each of you, because I think it's all super interesting stuff. And Ben, you were saying something about the hurdles in harmonizations and sharing. Why not to do it? And one of the points I've been making is, for a number of reasons, I respect and accept that there are organizations that are not prepared to share for different reasons. But one point I've been making to some of those is, well, why do you not share at least the metadata? So I'm fine. You don't want to share the data with anyone. But as a national institution whose mandate is collect and share maybe soil for public use, I think it would be fair, at least for you to know, to share where the data is and what you have, and then decide who to share your data with. So my point is me making, okay, I get it, but at least try to share the metadata, try to make something available so that whenever the next donor, the next development partner comes, can say, well, actually, which is what we try to do with the data availability map, is at least we know that there is more stuff here. And maybe it's totally fine because, agriculture is concentrated there, or maybe it's because cash crops are there. Does I need to look more into this other area? So by knowing that, at least you're making a big step forward, even without sharing the data, let's say, per se. Then another point that I noted down from Zinnya's, and I think also Dennis was referring to that. Then one thing is sharing or having some data available. One other thing is to do something with that. So it's not the data for the data per se, but it's sharing is more, let's say, or should be more than just posting some data set over a website, no? But that, I understand, requires capabilities, require funding for a cash-strapped organization which is already struggling, I see why that becomes a big burden. And it's not just the possibility to share data, but the possibility to actually understand and map, okay, which services could be structured with that data, because then it becomes a different story. But I understand this is not happening neither overnight and nor it's happening by itself. It needs funding, investment, and so forth. And then as you touch upon many very interesting points. Gen AI, yes, because after all, again, it's data is a piece of the puzzle, but it's not data per se. It's what we do with that. ISDA, which is an organization based in East Africa, has been already testing the use of generative AI to create a virtual agronomist, for example, so based with the data. Then and I think that's going to democratize very much access to data and information, because after all, I do not expect a farmer to be able to go to SoilHive and download data and do something with that. I would need some intermediary to help him with that, or help her with that. And that's where AI could actually make us do huge steps forward. Then again, we will go into the issues of which data is there and garbage in, garbage out. So I mean, again, being able to do something meaningful with the data. And scalability, you also touched upon something that, just to refer to what we've been doing, we already changed our data architecture once. We're probably going to do this again before the end of the year. And that has to do exactly with being able to deliver something at scale, which requires not only resources, but also the time and the luxury to think about when you grow. Okay, now I want to try to do this different, and being able to do POCs for see how that happens. So that's a privilege we had, and unfortunately, it's not something that all organizations have the luxury to do. And last but not least, you referred to Kenya and some of the great work that has been doing there, and I feel that at some point there is also a need for. I mean, one of the challenges, if I try to put myself in the shoes of a national organization, is try to have some independent brokerage among the different technological options that are out there, because it's easy for me to go knock the door of Calder in Kenya and say, hey, look at SoilHive, this is exactly what you need. And maybe it is, maybe it's not. So having access to organizations like the ones you represent that can help and guide them to make appropriate choices, I think it's also very important. So sorry if I took some time to elaborate a little more, but you've been really saying something that are super interesting. And flipping on the opportunity. So flipping on, we know the challenges, which are many, but are there any good practices, any recommendations, any great stories you'd like to share, things that went well? Let's do the other way around this time, if you agree. So let's start with Dennis, and then Zinnya, and then Ben. So so we mix it up a little bit. Is that fine, Dennis, for you?
Yeah, totally. Right. So there's been a lot of talks, like the one of the really like big trends in data engineering, I think, a couple of years back and now as well, though a bit overshadowed, was an idea of building data meshes, where you have basically rather than a data platform, right? That is a bit self-served, and you have a federated governance, but then still people who share data and put the data in the platform retain the governance ownership behind the data and ownership of created value by the data, and creating kind of data products out of it. And I think, though, a lot of people claim that the data mesh or data fabrics, the technical counterpart of it, are quite far from being possible in terms of the technological stack that we have right now. I think that the ideas that are behind this is very, very good. I think that idea of self-governing the data that you share, and building and sharing data for value and building something out of the data is very important. This can be leveraging the system that is promoting the data sharing, like, for example, for mining insights and having something that is instant value out of the data downloaded. Helps a lot with adoption of the data itself. But then allowing to build something on top of this is crucial. Of course, there are static and very common challenges that yield best practices. Those are establishing the security standards, right, and establishing this trust that I was talking about. It's not having and being public and sharing about the standards of the security and how would the data ecosystem build trust of the with people that are part of the ecosystem is very important. But then if we talk about the further into the communities, promoting the collaboration between the communities is important. And I think this is echoing a lot of the point that you made about the metadata. I think this is one of the key points of data mesh, and I think is a brilliant next step. Though people don't often understand what's the difference, but educating people regarding what is a difference, and sharing metadata doesn't mean that everyone has access to your data, but rather can see opportunities of using cost sharing and then getting joint value out of the two different data sources is one of the best leverages of adoption that we've seen by like when we were building and consolidated data warehouses for countries through regions and even cross countries. The one thing is that I'll mention, and of course there are a ton of them, right? But the one thing that I mentioned that is very, very important, that speaks a lot to also ease of adaptability and ease of usage, is establishing a very, very strong standardization practices. I think that there is a point where this becomes a very big trade-off between a data that is available very in a good format and the data that is available in with a good scale. And I think that's and that's ultimately what forces us, for example, to migrate from architecture to architecture and trade off some of the readability of the data as is with the scalability. But establishing a very strong standards on data in will eventually get an incredible uptake on the data usage, because nobody wants to use unharmonized or dirty or data that is filled with white noise. And those are the kind of the closest ones to me in terms of the technical challenges. I'll let maybe other speakers to also talk about their challenges, and we can talk about this a bit more if we don't cover everything.
Awesome, Dennis. I thank you for here to interesting notes, and I'll refrain for commenting for now. Over to Zinnya for more opportunities, good practices, inspirations.
Yes, I think that I will retake the topics of Dennis, because I think that here is the key. This part of to improve the use of this data in the communities. And I think that, for example, in terms of communities, one of the communities that have a lot of impact in that sense, of a lot of research, and they are advanced in this part, is the open data communities of different countries, especially, for example, I don't know, in France, for example, at the beginning they started to share all type of data, right? And they found that finally this was not a good solution, because no one used this data, and it was not the community didn't work on this data as they wanted to work, right? So they start more improving what were the needs of the communities, and in that sense to try to find the data sets that will help the community directly and to share this data in a better sense. So I think that here is the key to go in through all the other aspects that we listed as challenge, because in the use of this data and using this data, you will start improving what are the challenge of each type of data, each type of use case, each type, because as you know, we don't have the solution for all the data in the world, and we don't have the solution for, we have the solution of little sectors according to the type of data, the use case, etc., etc., etc. So I think that here we have the key. And I have another example, and this is more related for humanitarian action. I think that this is one of the, you know, in our society, I think that here in this type of events that we can have around the world, I think that here we have the moment that the society exactly see that what we need the data and why, and etc., etc. So that's this type of moments, I think that they are key for us to push the need for this data. Of course, if we have an infrastructure created before, that would be great, because we can have a quickly action for that that problems that we want to solve at the moment of an event, of a crash happen. But if it is not the case, this type of events can help to understand what is the ecosystem of data that can help for that event in that localization. For example, I have an example of Mexico in the last earthquake, and it was really nice to see how all the big companies share in one moment their data. And in that moment, they develop a very nice platform, but it was all developed from scratch in 3 days, you know. Of course, after the event, they closed this sharing of data, but I think that it was a very good example of, yes, if we want, we can do it. So it's only a kind of understanding, and maybe this governance and establishing policies, etc., that we can share data in some events, and this data can be used for all the data users, and that we can have an impact on data driving decision at that moment. So yes, I think that yes, this is all the cases that I wanted to share.
Awesome. And I imagine that it was for rescue operations, right? The data that was shared with from the companies.
Yes,
linked with
yes. For example, satellite image at the moment of the building crash, where the people with the mobile, for example, with the applications of the mobile, the mobility of people, etc., etc. They have a lot of data at that time, and this was a great example of yes, how we can share to help the society.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Last but not least,
you
started and you conclude basically.
No. For us, the opportunity is huge. Is out there. So what we are doing, in line with what you have made, progress with, is that the first thing is we need to position. That's our argument. We need to position this within countries. You have done it globally, right? But we think that to make it more relevant, let's try to customize this to country situations, because we think that you have made a lot of progress by pulling together what is in those countries together, and that makes it more relevant. So if we want to improve upon what you have done, then we need to replicate that at country level, not only for soil, for agronomy, for market, for weather. And those are the ones we refer to as content data. But at the same time, we need to do that for user data. We need to build that kind of data systems for farmer identities, agribusiness identities, input dealers, fertilizer dealers, tractor providers. Once you build these two types of data system for countries and they talk to each other, you create more value because you have the soil data, but an entity needs that soil data to make decisions. If there's a commercial, grower that wants to go into soybean in Tanzania, you need that user identity to connect with, the soil maps, the polygons, and all those things. So we talk about the fact that there's a need for that user data as well to be built for countries, as well as the content data. So in addition to the soil that you have done, let's do the same for weather, for agronomy, for soya, for cocoa, for coffee, to reduce the duplication. I mean, what you have done, if I'm going to do some work in Tanzania, I don't need to go and pay and collect those soil data again because they are there. I can just take advantage and pull them together. So that is one thing that we are saying, that the opportunity is there because there are so many investments already in these countries. If you go to Kenya alone, you see hundreds of development organizations investing in agricultural data, and nobody is pulling them together. Tomorrow, another person will go and pay and collect data, process data, analyze data. The technologies are there, so everybody's doing it. So our argument is that the opportunities are there. So let's pull the building blocks together. Instead of doing something new, let's enable countries to put their feet down and allow those who are investing in the country to share data, create that enabling environment for them, And it's only the national government that can do that. If you leave it to development organizations, they will tell you, yeah, if they are willing, they'll share. But if the government says, look, you are operating in my country and there's a policy for you to share your agricultural data, not everything, just as, Simone, you were saying, some metadata. We're not asking you to share everything. It's your business data, right? But the policy says, because you have collected this data in my country, policy says, share this, for somebody else to improve upon it. So that's the first one. The policy part needs to be clear. And as, described by Dennis, the technologies are there. It becomes cheap every day. The technologies are there to do it. So once the policy is clear, the tech people can come in and allow people to share data. And then the business part, as we heard earlier, the business part, we are saying that once you do this, the content and the user part, then you move beyond 5-year projects and build sustainable business model around the data, because you are going to protect that user data. It's not going to be open. And if somebody needs it, they need to pay. Once they pay, you have revenue to continue updating that database. So you need to build, business model around it to allow continuous data sharing. And finally, if you build that kind of infrastructure, as we talk about, then you need a governance model. Even though government is going to drive that national infrastructure, we don't recommend government to be the governor or administrator of the infrastructure. You need an independent, steward, custodian to be in charge of that. If that happens, then private sector guys who have, let's say, insurance data in Tanzania will be willing to follow the rules and policies and share their data, because they know it's not going to the government. It's going to an independent body that is going to apply the policies developed by the government and the business model and the technology. So for us, it's something we are working on, and we think that those 4 parts, the policy part, the technology, the business and the governance model. Those are the 4 things that countries need to put in place. And that's what we refer to as infrastructure, not just the technology as the infrastructure for agricultural data, but you need those 4 things to be functional in the countries to allow all those who have agricultural data in the country to start sharing and allow integration, harmonization, and all kinds of things to happen.
Great stuff, great stuff. Thank you so much. And I see we have 10 minutes. So, I mean, if there's anyone in the among the participants who want to throw questions, feel free to use the chat box. In the meantime, I'll try to wrap up a little bit what you just said to me in terms of opportunities and way forward. Clearly, there's one piece on principles and standards, and yes, and it's agree with you. I mean, clearly, data mesh fabrics may be complicated, or may take time, but this is, I think, this is not a good excuse not to try to unpack at least some of this, or not to try to again land it on some principles and standards that could facilitate the federation of what's already existing, or at least a part of that. So yeah, I think that's critical, honestly, because the idea that, I mean, this is a discussion I had with my colleagues even when we were trying to set up and designing this, and I said, look, the idea of creating a one-stop shop, everybody's a fan of saying, let's make a one-stop shop for. This is not the time anymore for one-stop shops. We are in a new era. So I'm all in for what you were suggesting, and also because this is connected to the value which you also talked about, and some of your colleagues talked about too. But when we did the trust model for the platform, I mean, sometimes you get the point of, oh, but farmers do not want to share the data. My experience, honestly, has been different. They're clearly concerned about what the data is happening, but I got it loud and clear from many farmers across different geographies that we know there is some value. We don't know how much value there is. We'd like to be part of that and that value in that value chain, and that process to be transparent. So if it's peanuts, that's fine. We are in for, we know, but we would like to know where we are in, what we are in for. We are not against sharing the data. We are not against selling the data either. But it has to be done in a way that doesn't jeopardize, doesn't undermine our business, doesn't undermine our ability to support our families, and it has to be transparent. So the value piece is again critical, and I think you both touched upon that, the fact that value accelerates exponentially, also been referred to that, but you do need to map the cases. You do need to map which are the different use cases, because again, Zinnya said it, Ben said it, it's not the data per se, but it's rather what can we do with that data. Making the case, I think it's also an important element, because it's easier with disasters to say, hey, well, we experienced it all with COVID, with crisis. It's easy to mobilize at that time, but what do you do with low onset crisis? What you do with soil degradation? It doesn't feel to the majority of the people in this world soil degradation as something that's going to impact their life in a few minutes. In reality, it can have a major impact. So how do you make the case economically, financially, etc., to invest into data there? And last but not least, localization, institutionalization, instead of duplication, instead of setting up yet another initiative platform and so forth. And I agree with you. I mean, the principle, for example, we took was let's build up, a UI, a user interface, because we'd like to be able to have organizations, people that are not soil scientists only, to access to this data. But as part of our trajectory, one thing that we want to do is to make the code available so that an organization may want to just use the code and set it up and brand their own SoilHive for themselves. Or they may be, in terms of business model, they may say, you know what, we would like to have a branded version of our own soil data platform, but do it yourself on our behalf. So we have a service level agreement, and that's also a way that can make an organization not having the capabilities to do it, to organize their data better without having to reinvent the wheel. So wrapping it up, I think there are different ways in which we can, as you said, we can move things forward. It takes collaboration, it takes partnerships, and let me just check whether there was any questions, but nope. So I think that we inspired the participants to the extent that they don't even have any questions to ask, but I'll just wrap it up then. And thank you very much for your contributions. I take it as it's a first step towards doing something together. And you know, thank you so much. If you have any final words or something, just feel free to chime in, because we have 4 minutes before we need to close it down. So good, then I take it as we can wrap it up. Thanks. Thank you, Ben, Zinnya, Dennis. It's been a pleasure and honor to be here with you today, and I'll see you around.